I guess I should probably start by saying thank you to Eileen, although I wasn't sure if maybe I should wait till the end of my speech to thank her. But thank you, Eileen, for inviting me to be here tonight. Eileen didn't mention, but she used to work for us in the in Batalf House as our executive assistant, and I got to know Eileen quite well during that. So, Eileen, thanks for the invitation. I'm happy to be here. And thanks to all of you who came out this evening to be here. Hopefully, at the end of this, you'll get something out of this through my life experience and some of the reflections I can share with all of you. But in order to get a sense of who's here tonight, you heard I'm a big U2 fan. So I'm just going to ask a question. Who in here prior to tonight had heard of the band U2? Okay, that's pretty much everybody. All right, keep your hands up. How many of you have been to a U2 concert? Ooh, okay. Where? Worcester. Which tour was it? Do you remember? Joshua Tree. Which one? MetLife. And which do you remember which tour it was? Excellent. Wow, excellent. All right, and for anybody else who maybe didn't get to a concert or went to a concert or otherwise, how many have had either a discography of theirs, an album of theirs, a song of theirs, make a special connection with them in some way, shape, or form? Eileen, which song?
I really like With or Without You.
With or Without You. Anybody else? Scott, you had your hand up? Great. So, for me, obviously I'm going to talk about this song, which has had I've had a connection with for, it's hard to say this now, 36 years. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the song and really what it's meant to me and really some of my reflections on my life and my faith as seen through the words of that song. But I will say that there was one particular album that came out from U2 in 2001 that was called All That You Can't Leave Behind. And it's not necessarily their all-time best-selling album, but it's a great album. And at the time, it kind of became an anthem for many here in the United States post 9/11, as it had many songs that were very relatable to what was being experienced in our grief and in our tragedy. So it's one that I personally resonate with as an album. So you may be asking yourself, what does a 55-year-old male with a 36-year-old song have to say that you might be relevant for all of you? Why should you care? Why is it relevant? I think these are reasonable questions, and I'm not sure that at the end I'm going to have the answers to necessarily satisfy them for you. But what I will say is that the connection to this song has changed for me over the course of my life. And in those 36 years, from the first time I heard it on Armed Forces Radio in Sinop, Turkey, back in 1987, to the time now that I listen to it on my iPhone, the song has different meanings for me. In preparing for this evening's talk, it gave me an opportunity to reflect a little bit on my life and to go backwards and look back in my life, look at my present life, and try to look forward a little bit, because I think the song does that for us as well. And in fact, it was one of the goals that I set for myself in 2023, which was to spend more time in reflection, and in prayer, and to try to think about, what my life is at this point and how I can be a better person and how I can use my own experiences to make other people's lives better and to try to be, like I said, a better person. And I feel like my interior life, my prayer life, is something that I was very strongly connected to when I was young. When I had a lot of time, I was less busy, less distracted. And I found that as I've gotten older, as I've had children, as they've had their activities, I've had my own activities, my work responsibilities, I find that I don't spend as much time on my interior life. And so that was something that was very important to me as I was reflecting on those New Year's resolutions at the beginning of the year. How do I get into that better connection? And there's been points in my life when I've been able to do that better than others. I went on an 8-day silent retreat at one point. If you haven't done that, I would highly recommend that. That certainly allowed me a lot of time to think, to reflect, to pray, to think about who I am as a person. And so that's something that I try to do in my daily life and something I'm trying to work on as a person. And I think there's value in that. But back to the song, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. The song itself is pretty straightforward, right? It's 4 minutes and 37 seconds long. Trust me, I looked it up. It's comprised of 3 verses. It's really comprised of drums, a couple of guitars, a bass guitar, some really awesome vocals. I'm not going to sing them. and a chorus comprised of 8 words that repeats 8 times. And I think Eileen printed the words, and they're on your table, so there'll be points where I'm going to reference those, and you can certainly look at those in front of you. But to me, this song is about a journey. And I've always found it inspirational in my life, and have never grown tired of hearing it on the radio or singing along to it. And that could be at the concert, in the car when I'm by myself, or sometimes in the shower. Yes, I sing in the shower, and yes, I sound awesome. So, I know everybody thinks they do, but I really do. So my daughters, Kate and Riley, Kate and Mia could certainly attest to that, right, guys? Yeah, okay. You didn't think you were going to get away without being called upon, right? But anyways, I don't care what they say. I think I sound great. And so Mia and Kate are here tonight. Kate is in the School of Social Work. She was referenced earlier by Patrick. Graduated in 2023 and is in the School of Social Work. Mia is a freshman here in the School of Nursing. What I like about the song is it's both aspirational and for me it's inspirational. And interestingly, when I was on my way back from Ireland last summer, I was on an Aer Lingus flight, and I was listening to the radio on the flight, and there was a 30-minute documentary on the flight about this song. And I thought, well, I'm on Aer Lingus, I'm coming back from Ireland, it's U2. It almost felt wrong not to listen to the documentary. So I kind of plugged in and I listened to it. And what was interesting, I don't remember, I think there was 3 people that they profiled, but the one that stuck out to me was a young man, probably not as young now as he was at the time, but a young man who was talking about his life and talking about how he had graduated from college, he was professional, he was making good money, driving a great car, had a girlfriend, things were good. And he felt things were good, but they weren't great. And he was on a retreat and was kind of sneaked out of the retreat to be with his girlfriend, and was on his way back to the retreat house. Song came on the radio and stopped him dead in his tracks. And he said he broke into tears because it was a moment for him to reflect on what it was he was looking for and realize that he hadn't found it yet, despite all the success he had and despite all the what he thought was happiness at the time. As a result, he basically went on this journey of discernment and ended up becoming a Jesuit priest. And so for me, listening to that story, working at a Jesuit institution, working with many Jesuit priests, that particular story rang true for me and kind of got me thinking more about that song. And I was actually kind of talking to all my children about it, saying, if you haven't listened to it, listen to it. Listen to the words, try to sit with it. And so as I think about it, I thought it might be helpful to maybe go through the song, a few of the lyrics, talk about how that relates to my life, and go from there. And so as I was preparing for this evening, I found it actually hard to speak the words because I know the song so well. I felt tempted to sing them. I'm not going to do that. And I will spare you that. But if you look at the words on the page there, I'll read the first verse and then I'll talk about it. So it talks about, I have climbed the highest mountains, I have run through the fields, only to be with you. Only to be with you. I have run, I have crawled, I have scaled these city walls only to be with you. But I still haven't found what I'm looking for. But I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And while I didn't have to climb those mountains or run through those fields to be here with you tonight, this verse very much speaks to some of the personal and professional journeys that I've made throughout my life. As a native of Utah, youngest of 7 children, I very much had to bootstrap my life. I was raised Catholic in an overwhelmingly Mormon area of the country, and it wasn't easy. A lot of the Mormon neighbors that we had did not want their children playing with us Catholic kids. I think part of that was probably because my parents smoked, right? My parents had alcohol, although not excessive, but we had it in our house, and we were, not like the rest of our neighbors. And so I think what happens in a lot of those cases is you turn inward, right? And so the Catholic community in Utah is actually a quite vibrant community, and one that lifts each other up, and people that turn inward on their faith and support one another. And my recollection and my perspective was that the Catholic community there was quite devout and quite fairly devout and both very tight-knit. The families, all the big families tended to know each other. And the Lochheads certainly were a big family. There were 7 of us children, and we were one of those big families. I also remember them all being very big Notre Dame fans, which at the time was fine, but then Doug Flutie came along, and I think we gathered a few BC fans in Utah, although not many. And my dad was one of those people that didn't really trust the public schools. He had some very strong feelings that those were where the Mormon kids learned, and he didn't want us going to public school. So he was a devout, very staunch supporter of Catholic schools in the area, and I spent all of my grade school at St. Vincent de Paul Catholic School from K through 8. Yes, I met up with Penelope, who was a 3-foot-long solid pointer stick, who got quite comfortable with the knuckles on my fingers when she wrapped those the one time I got to know her. But the nuns there were very caring, they were very strict, and I do credit them with a lot of the faith that I have today and my desire for higher education. Because I was getting it at home, but not in the same ways as the nuns were imparting it every day in our lives. I got to high school, and there was only one Catholic high school in the area, Judge Memorial High School, and that was the location that pretty much all the Catholic grade schools fed into for the kids who ended up going to Catholic high school. And at the end of the day, my parents couldn't afford it, and I was the only one of the 7 kids that we couldn't afford to go to the Catholic high school, and so we made do. And that happened to be because during that time frame, my parents struggled financially, and I ended up moving around about 9 times during my childhood, from the time I was born till the time I left when I was 17. We moved around a lot. We had a lot of financial instability, and what we were able to turn to during that time frame was our faith, our Catholic community, the school. I was fortunate to be in a Catholic school during that whole time, and that's how we kind of pulled ourselves through. We also spent a lot of time together, pooling our financial resources together to make ends meet. My dad oftentimes was out of work, couldn't afford to keep the house and keep food on the table, and we ended up putting together a family account that I, as a dishwasher at the age of 15, was putting money into. My sisters were putting money into it. My brother was as well. And that was important for us to be able to kind of stay in the house we were in until my dad could get back up on his feet. So I think it left a little bit of PTSD with all of us. We get together at family reunions now, we talk about the family account, and it's good for a good chuckle, but at the time it was quite difficult. But beyond my immediate family, those 2 institutions were constants, and I could certainly count on them year in and year out. And like I said, I credit a lot of my faith development and my desire for education to the nuns who I learned from. My parents, of course, reinforced their part of the faith, and certainly touted education, but they had no plan for us. And that's really where I got introduced to the Army. I was working out in the backyard one day. Recruiter calls me up. I had no plans for college, but the recruiter happened to get me on a good day, helped me to see a pathway forward to higher education. Granted, it was a 4-year divergent path to go down this military path, not one that my dad had done, not one that any of my relatives had done, and not coming out of any deep patriotic sense at the time, but one that really did give me some hope for being able to attend college. It's a decision that I didn't take lightly at the time. In fact, I struggled with it quite a bit at the time that I was engaged in trying to make that decision. I almost backed out of it at one point, but decided to stick with it, and even though it meant 4 years of being away from my family and 4 years of sacrifice, it's something I felt that at 17, if I started breaking my word to myself or breaking promises to others, that I didn't know if I could trust myself going forward. So I gutted it out, put my head back down, got back in that commitment, and moved forward. And it's a decision today I don't ever look back and regret, and it's one that I think has grown in importance in who I've become today, and some of what I would consider some of the grit that I have in my life. I put very much in that time frame of having to make that decision and stick with that decision, despite others who were trying to talk me out of it, my mother for one, and others who felt like maybe that wasn't the right path. But in the end, it worked out well. My dad passed away in 2001, a few days after 9/11, and I was just always so grateful that he got to see me graduate from college. So I'm a first-generation student. Didn't know that at the time. Didn't even know that term existed. but have come to learn that, subsequently working here and working in higher education. And it's something, like I said, my parents always valued education and their faith, but really had no plan for us to get through college or to get on past high school. I'm fortunate enough, and to this point today, I'm still the only one of my siblings that's gone to college. And certainly of the next generation of all my nieces and nephews, nobody has gone to college. So I look back and feel very fortunate that I had the resources and the insight at that point in time to stay with it. I will say that we've been fortunate. I mentioned 2 of my daughters who are here. My older daughter, Riley, is also a graduate of BC, so we're quite proud of them. Our youngest daughter, Dylan, also a good student. Hopefully, in my heart, that she finds her way to the heights as well, but she will make up her own mind. I think I'll move on here. I think looking at the next section of the song, it goes on to talk about, I have kissed honey lips. I have felt the healing in her fingertips. It burned like fire, this burning desire. I have spoke with the tongue of angels, something I've never done, and I've held the hand of a devil. It was warm in the night. I was cold as a stone, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And so for me, as I think about that verse, it very much speaks to me about the relationship I have with my wife. My wife and I met when she was 17, I was 19. We got married a few short years later, the year after she graduated from college. Can you imagine that? Any seniors here? Anybody ready to get married next year? I don't see a lot of shaking heads. We were young, but we were so in love. I met her when she was young at a really trashy, tacky, over 18 dance club in Leominster, Massachusetts. Who would have thought you'd find your soulmate in a dance club? But we did, right? And she says, we have disputed facts here. She says it's because there was this loud, obnoxious group of military guys yelling at the top of their lungs, being silly. I say it's because she couldn't keep her eyes off me. But, whichever one it was, is we ended up together, and we were able to raise 4 beautiful children together. We got married at St. Mary's in Milford, Mass, by a priest who was actually a grad student here at BC. Great guy, loved him very much. And he ended up leaving the priesthood about a year after he married us. We felt a little lost. He was the guy that we connected with in that parish. And we were like, wow, does our marriage still count? Is it still Catholic? Does it still a sacrament? But we moved on. We've been a part of several Catholic communities in California, in Mendon, Mass. Now we're in Southborough at St. Matthew's. And I do find that our community is where we find a lot of strength and a lot of support from those that we know and that we work with. And I would say that Chris and I really have bootstrapped our lives together. Right? We grew up together. She was 17, I was 19. I'm now 55. I won't tell you how old she is. You can do the math. But we've spent a life building it together, setting our goals together, how big we wanted our family to be. What role faith played in our lives, what role we wanted it to play. Our oldest daughter has gone into ministry work. She got her degree in theology, found her passion here at BC, studying theology. Not what she started out studying, but found it. Our daughter Kate found her passion here through the Pulse program. She ended up volunteering at a homeless shelter for women and children, and now is becoming a social worker. And I know that had a big impact on her decision to go down that path. And our daughter Mia is going into nursing. So we have 3 daughters, all in helping professions, and I have no doubt that is because of the way that my wife has raised our children. They are very caring, they're very engaged, just like my wife is. And as much as I feel that I'm damaged as a person at times, right, and that as a husband and as a father, as a son at times, as a brother, not always measuring up, not always following through, not always doing what you should. I really do believe that it's the relationship that I have with my wife and my family, that keeps me going and keeps my faith strong and keeps me on a path of not getting too calcitrant or too inwardly focused. Because I do think at the end of the day, if you get too inwardly focused, you're not being who you need to be, which is being outwardly focused in relationship with others and trying to help others move along as well. So I was going to make a joke about the girls being the apples of our eyes and some being sweeter than others, but really they're all sweet, so I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to jump down some of my notes here. Talked about feeling the hand of a devil, right? It was warm, but you feel cold. You know, as I reflected on that, I think the element of that rang true for me was the fact that I feel like at the time I'm what holds myself back. You know, it's not other people, it's not circumstance, it's me standing in my own way. And maybe some of you felt that as well. And so as I think about what it is for me, it's a sense of being too inwardly focused, you know, loneliness or a sense of pity at times. And I know enough about myself now, and through the help of my wife sometimes helping me see what I can't always see in myself, you know, that when I get stressed, I can tend to get pretty negative. And I know that bleeds out into my relationships with others, and it shows up in other places. So I'm quicker now to realize it. She's been helpful in helping me to see that, and I'm grateful for that insight. And I said she knows me so much better than I know myself at times. But I do think praying certainly helps me bring me out of those states. But I also think that working with others, being in relationship with others, and focusing on others' needs is also what helps bring me forward and gets me out of that state of mind. And being outwardly focused on others' needs, being in community, taking care of others moves me away from my own inner focus, moves others away from their inner focus, and I do believe properly orients us to what really matters and what's really important. And so as I think on to the final verse, I think the final verse is pointing us to God and pointing us to his kingdom and Jesus as our brother and our Savior. And it says, and for years, I'm one of those people that would sing the wrong words to a song. Like, this is one that I did not know until I saw the lyrics a few years ago, that when he says, I believe in the kingdom come, I had no idea what he was saying. But once you see that, and then the next line, which is so, I think, poignant, then all the colors will bleed into one, right? So I just think that's such a powerful start to the verse. So I believe in the kingdom come, that all the colors will bleed into one, but yes, I'm still running. You broke the bonds, and you loose the chains, carried the cross of my shame. Oh, my shame, you know I believe it. And then he repeats, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for 4 times, right? So for me, this is a beautiful verse, right? And when I think about the kingdom come, like many of you, I'm sure, who know the Lord's Prayer, probably the Lord's Prayer comes to mind. I also think about the work we strive to do here at Boston College, right? And much of what has animated St. Ignatius's vision for education and the role that education can play in society, you know, in helping to form leaders who are focused on things, on the common good and and on humanity. And as Christians, I believe we were all called to serve one another and to help build the kingdom of God here on earth. We do this through prayer, through example, I think through hope, through belief, through teachings and inspiration of Christ, and through relationships and through building of community. And I'm not sure if any of you have experienced this in the same or similar way, but I can tell you that I've had several moments over my life where I've had these intense experiences. And I can't always explain what they are. I can't even always explain what the feeling is, other than it's this intense feeling of warmth, connection, and almost a sense of harmony. And it's in those moments, many of them, yes, life events, a marriage, right? And I do believe that our marriage is a sacrament and it's sacred. And in those moments of life, you know this is where you're supposed to be. This is the path you're supposed to be on. When all my children were born, same thing. There's just this intense feeling of connectedness and this intense feeling of harmony with the world, with your spouse, with your family. But I've also felt it in conversations with people, and not even people that I necessarily are my favorite people. And I have many that I work with that are not my favorite people, and that's okay, right? But I've had those moments where you can be in a conversation with somebody and you see their humanity. You see the common connection you have. And sometimes it hits you when you're not expecting it. And I've had my eyes well up in tears, in these conversations when I've least expected it. And as I reflect on that, I certainly think it's this element of relationship, which I think is what makes us human and what makes us want to be with others. And I think in many ways, I'm certainly not a theologian, but in many ways, it feels to me like those are the glimpses of God and the glimpses of the kingdom that we get to see here on earth. They're fleeting, they're not constant, but they leave you wanting more. And you know that in those moments, this is where you're supposed to be, this is what you're supposed to be feeling. And that's an incredible feeling. And I wrote here, I'm not sure if it's agape, if it's the Holy Spirit, or just a tiny glimpse of heaven, but it's definitely relational, at least as I've experienced it. And I think a beacon for something greater than what we routinely experience, in the day in and day out. How are we doing on time? Good? Like I said, like beams of light from heaven into this world, these experiences leave you longing for more and keep us on our journey. At least it does for me. It's my belief that love is infinite, right? And how I know that is because I have 4 children, right? I love my wife, and I've always loved my wife, but I have 4 children, and as they've come into the world, I don't love one child less because another one is here. And so I know that love grows, and you have the capacity for greater love. And I always come back to the feeling that must be how God feels about us. Right, that we're all here, he loves all of us, and even when we're not our best selves, like many times our children don't do what we want them to do, but that doesn't mean we don't love them. It doesn't mean we love them any less. And, and I often come back to that and think that must be, to some extent, what God wants for us, right? It's this infinite love for us and this desire to want the greatest for us in our own personhood and our own best efforts and best capabilities to be who we're supposed to be. The song talks a little bit about all the colors bleeding into one, and that seems so pertinent to me today in this world of division and political divide, where our differences seem to be what gets called to attention and what separates us. It should be more about what's bringing us together, what's binding us together in our common humanity. And I think the idea that at the end of times that we're all going to come together and be in unity with one another, I think is a powerful reminder of what's possible. But yes, I am still running after my career and my degree, running after my kids constantly, running like Forrest Gump. Anybody seen Forrest Gump? Running like Forrest Gump, not always knowing when to stop or why I'm running. Running on empty. To take a phrase from the song by Jackson Brown, but running to something or away from something, and that defined probably the early part of my career. And I would just say, as you all start thinking about moving into your careers and moving into those next stages, I think I would have benefited from the 3 questions that I think we posed to all of our undergraduates here that Father Michael Himes has put out there. I did not learn those until I got here, but I've used them many times with my own kids. And granted, had I been thinking about those questions at the time, I might not be up here talking because I might not have anything to say. But I do think that being able to discern, what brings you joy in this life, and being okay that it's okay to have joy in this life, and leaning into that when you find it. Is it something that taps into your talents and gifts, right? I've always been good at math and good at accounting and finance and things like that, but I'm also good at being creative. And there are aspects of my job here and jobs I've had previously where I don't get to fully leverage those creative talents that I have. And I have to make my peace with that or find other outlets for it. And in preparing for tonight, believe it or not, was actually a nice creative release for me. So, Aline, thank you for that. As well as this doctoral program I'm doing gives me a lot of opportunity to write, and writing for me is a way in which I can be creative and put my thoughts together in ways that flow well and aren't the ways I necessarily speak, particularly when I'm dealing with matters at work. I certainly think I would have avoided a lot of angst in my early career because I had a lot of angst. And I could never tell if it was the work, if it was the location that I was in, because I was from Utah and I thought I wanted to go back to Utah, if it was the work itself. And it took me several fits and starts to try and finally figure out why I do what I do and why I'm here at Boston College and why I spent most of my career working in Jesuit higher education. I came into Boston College initially dreading it. Not dreading coming to BC, but dreading the idea that I was going to get, I used to say the word pigeonholed in higher education. And, when I started down that path, I came back to BC for one reason. I wanted to get my MBA. So I took a job in the controller's office because I wanted to spend 4 to 5 years here, get BC to pay for my MBA, and then I could go right back to being a business professional. I was so worried about being an educator, or being seen as a nonprofit accountant. And for me, that was scary at the time. But 4 years in, I kind of realized that something was working. I enjoyed the community. I enjoyed being part of Boston College. And it was at that point, probably when I was in my mid to late 20s, I decided I really did want to make a career out of this higher education thing. And as was mentioned at the beginning, I am pursuing my doctoral degree in education. And at the end of the day, I think I would put myself in the ranks as an educator now. Yes, I know business. Yes, I can do finance and accounting, but I really am an educator, and I'm fully in on this mission we have here at BC, which is to help form young men and women to go off and use their gifts for the benefit of others and to live whole and complete lives. So that is very exciting for me and something that I love about my job. And I hope that all of you can find that same love and passion in the work that you do as you go off from BC into the start of your careers. And I'd say it's also helped me to grow. Conservative by nature, education has helped me to grow. I grew up in probably the most conservative state in the country, and that's both cultural, but also just kind of in my own being. But I've grown from that, and I'm much more accepting of others. And as much as I've had to bootstrap my life, from the beginning, and I lived by the motto, well, if I can do it, anybody should be able to do it. I see that that's flawed, right? I had benefits, I had advantages, I had some privileges that others don't have. And even though I felt that I struggled, there were others who struggle much more mightily than I ever had to. And so education, experience, certainly the perspective that my wife and daughters share with me all the time has helped me grow as a person and be a much more empathic and engaged person. And as I mentioned, both my parents have passed, but I do think that both of them would be proud of kind of what my wife and I have been able to do together as a couple. And, I think in those moments of passing, and thinking about the afterlife and wanting to be with your parents, and I lost a sister the same year as I lost my mother, there is this sense of wanting to be together in communion with them at some point in the future, and I can't wait to see them again. And that's what keeps you going, right? You want to live the good life, you want to be on the straight path, and you want to be moving yourself towards those people that you love and towards a God and towards a kingdom that I think holds out all kinds of hope for all of us. And so that's where I'm at. And so I do believe in the kingdom come, and I do believe that all the colors will bleed into one. I am still running. And the bonds and the chains that I find that in my life are the ones that are self-imposed, and I need to keep pushing those off. Carrying the cross of my shame, I think Christ carried the cross for all of us. And I think we now need to carry the cross for others and take up this faith and take up this way of living by example that brings us closer to God. So at its core, I believe this song is, like many U2 songs, about a journey of faith to find God. And I truly believe that we are given glimpses of God every day along this journey. And we recognize, the question I guess for us is, will we recognize him when we see him? And I do think that our chances improve if we can break those bonds, loose those chains, pick up the cross of helping others and building community, and through our own faith and hope. I will continue to sing this song. Sorry, Kate and Mia. And I'm sure that I will derive new insights from it as I continue on my journey of life and faith. And yes, I am still running in this journey of life, but I feel so fortunate to have so many companions in my life that are also on this journey with me. And I consider all of you tonight to be on a similar journey. So thank you for being with me tonight. And I really appreciate you coming out, and hopefully you got something out of that. So thank you very much.